Well, I'm sure you know this just as much as I do. We are no longer in the dark ages of video games, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing. It's no longer about getting the high score, okay? It is about how much money your mommy and daddy can give you to buy the most skins on Fortnite. That is who the true winners are these days. What I just described is essentially a crude description of what is a live service game today. They can come in a lot of shapes and sizes, but yeah, essentially it's usually a free game that is online, and essentially it is profited by people continuing to buy microtransactions within those games. Whether that be for cosmetics or maybe in-game DLC, could be a lot of different things. You know, like I said, that's just a general description of what makes a live service game what it is. But yes, they are very popular nowadays, and it would seem that they take up quite a bit of the video gaming landscape. Now, to get an actual idea of, how much of the video game landscape today is actually made up of live service games, we actually have to look at some numbers, and thankfully, late yesterday, a person by the name of Mat Piscatella gave us those numbers. Now, Matt is somebody that I have mentioned once or twice. He's a pretty big video game veteran. He used to work at Warner Bros. And Activision, and now he's a video game analyst at a company called Circana. They basically collect data on video games, and they do research, and they sometimes will produce these numbers and statistics. And I'll be honest, Circana is definitely a tough website to navigate. It's not user-friendly in the slightest. I think there's even like paywalls on it, so it's just kind of weird, but every now and then Matt will go on to Twitter or Bluesky, and he'll give us these important tidbits of information that are actually very interesting, and they give us insight on kind of what is going on right now in the video game industry. Now, yesterday, exactly what he gave us was pertaining to live service games. Specifically, when you look at two of the three main consoles, sorry Nintendo, we're looking at Xbox and PlayStation, how much are console players playing live service games, and how does that compare to pretty much any other type of game? Well, what Matt said is that over 70% of US active PS5 or Xbox Series players played at least one of the top 10 live service games of the month during January 2025. So obviously that was just last month, and then he goes on to say more than 40% of all time spent playing on the PS5 and Xbox Series in the US during January went to those same top 10 live service games. Okay, so we kind of have to break this down. Now, he says at the bottom that his source is the Circana Player Engagement Tracker. Now, as I said, this website is kind of tough to navigate. If you Google that, you will kind of find nothing, and good luck actually navigating their website. But he did actually make a post like right before this that looks to be those exact statistics. So yes, this is the Circana Player Engagement Tracker. Now, on the left, it's PlayStation, in the middle, it's Xbox, and on the right, it's Steam. So we're going to ignore Steam because he's just talking about PlayStation and Xbox. Remember, he said over 70% of players have played at least one of the top 10 live service games, and 40% of the overall time spent playing games on consoles was spent on specifically those 10 games. So now this list that he posted shows the top 15 games on all of those consoles, and this is just any game, not just live service. So looking at this and kind of deciphering it and kind of weeding out the ones that are not live service, between Xbox and PlayStation, 8 of the 10 are definitely consistent. So I know he's talking about Call of Duty, Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto, NBA, Marvel Rivals, Roblox, Madden, and Minecraft. The last two of those live service games I think come down to maybe like Payday, and then Rocket League, or maybe EA Sports College Football, something like that. So that gives us a rough idea of, yeah, the 40% of quite literally all-time gameplay on these two consoles was spent on just these 10 games. Now, if you think about it though too, there are plenty of other live service games that are not a part of these top 10 that I'm sure made up quite a good chunk of other gameplay. I'd say maybe 10%. I mean, you still got like Apex, PUBG, Overwatch, The Sims 4. I think at this point that's maybe even a live service game. With that being said, what I am getting at is that I'm pretty comfortable in saying that it's actually probably exactly half, so 50% of all gameplay, roughly speaking, on these two consoles is live service games. That is absolutely insane. Like I said, things are definitely different from maybe 10 or 20 years ago. And Matt even went on in this Bluesky thread, I think this was interesting. He said it used to be that players would jump from big game to some other games, but they were most often to moving to something new that they purchased. Okay, I'm rereading this and I'm now realizing it's kind of grammatically incorrect. Matt, you need to proofread, okay? But I think the point's still there. So he says, now the live service games suck out a ton of available time, and it's hard to beat free if it's good, so here we are. Yeah, I get it. I mean, essentially he's saying, if you think about your childhood, maybe you would go, 1 year buying like 15 different games, and you had to spend like $30 to $60 on each of those games. That was just kind of the norm if you were big into video games, but nowadays you could spend $0 on maybe just your 1 or 2 live service games that you juggle in between, and that's it. It's not a good thing or a bad thing, it's just kind of, however you look at it. Things are just essentially different. Now, other miscellaneous statistics he gave in this same thread that I did want to throw in here because they are interesting. He says total US video game market spending peaked in 2021. I think this wasn't too much of a surprise. That was kind of at the peak of COVID. He says total players and hours also peaked in that period, and then he also says the pace of games being released has not slowed. So yeah, essentially, even since the peak in 2021, these games are still coming out at a consistent pace. And then he also says mobile was the biggest and fastest growing content segment in the US in 2024. And yeah, that wasn't really too much of a surprise to me. Mobile has definitely been taking off. I'm not really a fan at all of mobile games, so I really don't care about that. But it is what it is. So where do we go from here with this huge surge in live service games now that we're pretty much at half of all console players are playing live service? Well, like I said, it depends on your outlook. Maybe this isn't a bad thing at all. According to Matt, I definitely think Matt doesn't think it's a good thing. But whatever your stance is on this, he does make an interesting point here. He says, we really could use some positive surprises this year and for a bunch of things to go right in 2025. So a lot is riding on the new products coming to market this year to hopefully combat or reverse some of these trends. Now, as some I saw have already picked up on, he's basically hinting on 2 main factors that are supposed to release in 2025 that could really stir up this whole peak with live service games that kind of continues to rise, actually. And those 2 things are the Nintendo Switch 2 and GTA 6. Now, the latter, GTA 6, that one's kind of an odd one because, with GTA Online, whenever that comes out, I don't know if that's going to be on day 1, but when that does come out, it really will officially be technically a live service game. But yes, if it's just the single player GTA 6 for, maybe a year or even 6 months, then yes, with that plus the Switch 2, I could see this 50% statistic going way, way down as we get to the end of 2025 and go into 2026, because people will be busy playing games that are definitely not considered live service, even though live service is the popular trend nowadays. Something like the Switch 2 or GTA 6 could just dramatically change the trend of the entire video game landscape.